go.
Hey, welcome to Exposition. And today we've got a returning guest, a really good guy, Jamie Sloane. We're going to talk about his show that he had at the end of last year, beginning of this year, the Visiteurs series in Huntington. And stay tuned. You'll have fun. Hey, welcome. You could welcome back. I'm glad you could stick with us.
You sound like me. That's awesome.
Okay, today we've got Jamie Sloane, a proper artist in the area, lives in Point Pleasant. His apartment probably overlooks the Ohio River. Probably a nice view.
It does.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we get to see the news weather from his apartment.
Is that where it's at?
WSAZ
The
webcam.
Yes.
Okay.
Right from my library window there. Yeah.
Cool.
In fact, my mom calls me every day and tells me she sees me from the window. Yeah.
That's so
Every
sweet.
time they show it. Yeah.
Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, when you got started in art, the interest, what started it, then you went to college for it, and we're here.
Well, I started professionally probably a good 8 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, and then but I've always did painting as a hobby. But I kind of like entertained the idea of being a professional artist someday, or imagine myself being in the museum, and of course that was a dream that came true this year. And but in the meantime, I was always swinging jobs here and there. But when I would go home, instead of having a social life, I was a bit of an introvert. I would paint all the time, and I progressively got better and better. But I could always draw. As a kid, I could draw. I kind of came out with the talent of drawing and had good penmanship and everything. I always had confidence in my hands.
Didn't we just see recently on Facebook some of your early off drawings, abstract drawings?
I went through my sketchbooks here the past couple of weeks, and I've been pulling out older things, and it's interesting because I see the stories of my life, and mainly the abstract pieces, and some of my earlier sketches and some of my ink sketches. My dad was a good draftsman as well, and some of them, those you could see where I was utilizing what he had taught me as a young kid, and
Wow.
yeah, it's just cool.
Oh,
The older you
grew
get.
up like that, I had a drafting table and had the tools, and I designed cars when I was younger.
Mhm, mechanical
Nice.
drawing, yeah.
And that was kind of my thing I wanted to do at that time was design cars and stylist and all that kind of thing. But
And you kind of do that, sort of? Like you have cars and you do
I have
things
cars,
to
but
them?
I didn't design them.
Well, you sort of...
Motorcycles.
Something.
Yeah. Anyway, you went to art school at Marshall?
I
Is that
studied
right?
music composition at Marshall. I actually entered on a vocal scholarship to sing opera,
Oh,
and which is unusual.
Incredible.
But one of my first talents was I was a singer. My mom had me singing in church, and,
Okay.
and so I did that a lot. And I thought, how am I going to get in college? How can I get a scholarship? And so I went that route.
Wow.
And then, years went by. I was actually private studying with composition for 10 years outside of the university because I couldn't afford it. And so I crossed over from the aural spectrum into the visual spectrum, utilizing the same aesthetics that you use in composition. It's the same thing visually. And so there was a familiar ground there. I understood the basics of that. So it was easy for me to cross over to the visual spectrum. And then I have a lot of stories to tell in my art, and I'm not necessarily a writer or an author, but I do get to tell stories in my art, and I think that's really what's behind that, like having something to say and looking for a platform to be vocal.
Yes, and your emotions.
Absolutely.
They speak through your art and in every piece.
They do. Definitely.
Yes, and what you're feeling and what you're experiencing.
And if I'm going through an emotional period, and you can see a lot of my work is I don't stay in any particular category. Like there's abstract expressionism, which is all designed off the element of emotional expression, like Jackson Pollock. He was obviously a very passionate person to the point where he was throwing paint at the canvas. And so when I'm feeling overly emotional, or I have a story to tell that is emotional, then I will talk to Jimmy, my manager and partner, and I will say, I think I'm going to do an abstract expressionist piece today, because I have something
you're
very
just
emotional
more
to say.
free in whatever comes out.
Yeah, each
on
one
the
is
canvas.
suitable. Like with my Visiteur series, for example, I'm telling stories about people, and it's not necessarily a portraiture collection, but it's like I'm telling a particular story, and I find the person to play the role.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yes.
I wasn't sure if
Yeah.
this was their story or this is how you saw them.
That's how I see them. Sometimes they actually connect with the story I'm telling.
Okay.
Like they actually have the right characteristics. Like if I chose you as someone who's going to ride a motorcycle around, like I need a biker, for example, and I just so happen to find out that you are, then it's ironic,
Okay.
And I just kind of go with it.
All right.
I love that.
So let's go some pictures. The first one is a self-portrait. Is this the first one you did?
The first one I did was of model Miranda Wood.
Okay.
She was the first one I did. She actually inspired the collection. I saw her walking one day, and I had this thing about the projected. These are about the projected self and then the real self, and I thought she just looked like somebody from a different time. And so I immediately saw her as someone sitting in this position, and all that happened at one time. The discovery of what the Ming Qing dynasty and all that was, and then I found a visitor sticker on the sidewalk one day. And I thought, oh, we're all visitors, and there was this whole metaphor like, we come to life and we visit for just a very brief moment. So it all kind of like happened at once, and I thought, that's what I want to do. You have to have a story if you're going to do a collection.
Theme,
yeah, and
maybe?
a theme, and something that you can create dialogue with people.
Okay.
different pieces that inspire you, and you just roll them all together, and it just
Yeah,
happens. Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
Now the one I did of myself.
That's the one with
Wood.
Miranda.
The one I did of myself was actually, I was dreaming that I was a Frenchman, and I had a French motorcycle jacket on in that dream. I was coming home from war, and the people, this is really weird, the people in the dream were my parents, and I arrived at their house from walking for miles, and they said my name in the dream. I woke up and Googled the name, and it was actually a Frenchman that had died in the war, and I was so moved by that.
Wow.
That I couldn't keep, I had to tell the story of that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I have green Nikes, and my dad had given me green Nikes when I was in grade school, and he said that in order to keep the kite high up in the air, you have to be able to run quickly, So it's always been a metaphor for keeping things going in life. And,
Oh, wow. I love that.
there's Miranda Woods. Actually, what she's wearing is a tablecloth around here, so it is about like creating a fictitious image of the self, and that's kind of like what we do when we project an image when we come out in public. We are creating the image or how we want to be perceived. So I played with the ideal of that, and of course she's wearing a denim shirt, and that's more to the true nature of who she is. Yeah, and the chair she was in was actually a chair owned by a Holocaust survivor. So there's a lot of little, everything in there is,
Symbolism.
I figure it
and-
meant something, but I just wasn't sure what it was. Now, is this because she works in Gal Police that you have the fleur-de-lis, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's the whole Visiteur French element, and
Okay.
of course that's derived from the French culture settlement in Gallipolis, in this area. This one's called Here for the Chocolate, and it's based on the idea of the Madonna. And I thought, I was like entertaining the ideal of like what it means to break tradition, to let your story come out. Sometimes we have to break tradition just to have our story told. Like we have to change things a little bit just to come into the world and say what it is that we want to say. And so she's not necessarily here to have the Christ child, but she's here just for the chocolate.
I love that.
Did you name that, or did she?
amazing.
I named that, yeah,
Okay.
Here for the Chocolate. When she showed up, she actually showed up in a Hershey's chocolate t-shirt.
Okay,
and
okay. I
So
see
when
that.
I called the models and I had them come to my studio, they say, what do I wear? What is this you want me to wear? And I always say, wear whatever you want, because a lot of times I will play off of what they're wearing.
Sure.
with just taking a chance.
Because
with
people
that.
want to
Whatever
be
they
perceived a
chose.
certain way,
Right.
Like I'll wear a Triumph motorcycle shirt just because, hey.
And I like
guy.
the ideal too that they're coming and they can. Well, when they saw themselves in the museum, they thought, that was the part where I participated in the story. I wore that shirt. And sometimes I kept it, and sometimes I don't. Like
Right.
Aaron Buckley, for example, from his piece, he was wearing a polka dotted shirt, and I changed that.
Okay, this is not him, but this is another
That's
one.
not him. That's a gentleman from the San Quentin prison records of 1930 to 1940.
Okay, so he didn't come to your.
No. He didn't come
Well-
to
This
the
came
reception.
from a.
Maybe
photo.
not in person.
Yeah, actually, all I had was that mugshot, so it
Right.
was just from the shoulders up. And Jimmy's my partner, his nephew, had modeled the rest of it, the
Oh,
remainder of it.
wow. That's awesome.
And then why flowers and.
That one's called It Ain't All Roses because he was on, in a death row situation. So life isn't always roses.
Okay.
He was arrested for grand larceny, which is the piggy bank with the American flag on it. And that's actually that was given to me as a gift. So halfway through that, I was looking through my library one day where I have a lot of artifacts, and that was in there, and I thought, oh, that's perfect, it's got the American flag on it, and he was American. And
Wow.
This is my brother. My brother Sean. This one's called No More, and it was about a contract that it's kind of interesting.
You see the paper at his feet.
Yeah, I don't tell people what that represents. I'm
Okay.
just going to keep that a mystery.
All right.
But it is a moment of victory, as you can see, and that's a good thing to talk about here is the textiles in the background because they all represent something. That's the laurel leaf, and it's a sign of victory historically.
Okay.
This one was my favorite for whatever reason, but it's just spooky and cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
It is.
There's a lot of story in this one. She was the only one we had sit for us several times. I was really struggling with the story.
Did you take
behind
photos of them to keep?
Definitely. I use photo references, yeah.
Okay.
I do. Because people don't want to sit for...
Right.
It took
Like
me
a
2
week
years
or
to do all
something.
these, So can you imagine people
my
sitting?
gosh.
Come over there for
long?
2 months.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
This is another one here. Maddie, she's wearing a Syrian robe. I believe it's like an 80-year-old, 100-year-old Syrian robe. That's a real robe.
Did she bring that, or did you make it up?
A patron of mine owns that robe and the headpiece as well, and as well as the drapes. I guess that would be like a necklace.
Yeah.
Owns that, and that was made out of like cartilage, bone cartilage.
Oh, wow.
Goodness.
With
That's a little bit more spooky.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting getting it on her because you had to bend it like in the back.
Ooh.
And then you got Art Deco in the back, kind of. Are you kind of into Art Deco?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, because a
And that
lot
is
of
Art
it's kind of
Deco.
Art Deco-y looking,
Yeah,
which
you're
I
right.
really like.
You're correct. The reason I did that too is, and it is about the beads, because when you see the beads on the dress, I believe there were 72 beads, and
You know when you paint each one.
yeah, you do. That's true. That's true. You should see my notebooks because I was like number 14. Tomorrow I will knock out 15, 16, and 17. And there's a lot of detail in every one of them. But,
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
like scales on a Chinese
And this
fish.
is the Egyptian.
He's a very good friend of ours, yeah. And he actually in his home he has sarcophagus, and I had this Egyptian character in my head, and I was like, he's perfect for this part. And but I decided to go into a personal place with him because I wanted to tell more of his story because he's such a very private person. So I wanted to crack that open. He doesn't let people very close to him, so he is holding a canoptic jar there, and it actually has the ashes of his cat that had passed away.
Is there one? Is that a bird or what? Sitting on the shoulder.
And the little bird on his shoulder is a bird named Minnie Bird. And that bird flew down to him. He's a bartender as well. One day when he had gone out in front of the place where he was attending bar, and it landed on him, And so he became friends with it. And those
Oh
were his
my
only really
goodness.
two friends. I've known him for years, and he still only lets me get so close to him, which is also what the shoes signify because they're Louboutin shoes, and they have spikes all over them. So that's not necessarily somebody you would want to get close to, So
And
it's
it's
kinda-
kind of
Like a
strange he would be a
porcupine.
bartender and be so
Right.
talkative with people,
Well, yeah.
There's-
I mean, does he get good tips? Does he not? That's a good
Yeah, I
question. Sorry, his name's Eddie. Sorry, Eddie. He would laugh. This is my partner and manager, Jimmy Hobbs, and I'm telling this story about his dad, who was a coal miner. his dad would come home after midnights. It's called working midnights. And they would watch Johnny Carson's together. And if any of you remember, after Johnny Carson went off, the TV would sign off and they would play the anthems.
Right.
So the textile behind it is that flag that would flow.
Okay.
Yes.
So I did that. And I also reversed the flag because normally it goes the other direction because when you're in the military and you wear that patch, it means you're
It's
a
supposed to
leader.
fly this way, yeah.
Yeah, you're leading the artillery. And Jimmy was the leader in his family in a lot of different ways.
I didn't know that.
And, you know, being that we are visitors and there are chairs in every single one of these, some of them you can see, some of them you can't. That was the chair that the visitors would sit in on the front porch. You know, what's that called? A clamback chair. And then that's his dad's lunch pail as well. And his dad's
Actual pail.
yeah, that's his lunch pail. And so his dad would come home and he would actually have a snowball in it, you know, the little cakes. And he would save that for Jimmy and you know, while they were watching Johnny Carson's, and that was something that they
That's
did
cool.
every evening. Yeah.
That's so awesome.
This is
There's
Kelsey
Kelsey.
Boyd. Now she had a totally different shirt on, and
To me, it kind of says to me, left at the altar or something, and
yeah, right. I mean, there's a lot of messages in them that are difficult to
because
articulate.
it still has the veil on, she could have just changed clothes and went home and said,
Well, the Indians, you know, I pulled from the Ming and Qing dynasties. They were all about from the Indian culture. They did that as well, where they did direct frontal shots like that when they're being wed or married. So I wanted to throw that veil in there to pay tribute to that because I was pulling out of that tradition to do that. She's an artist.
was she barefoot too? Or
Yeah,
just-
definitely.
Okay.
I believe she's from Kentucky, if I'm right. And she had told me a story once how she likes to walk through the mud and stuff, you know, along creeks.
Mm-hmm. No, I can get that.
This is my mom. This was an interesting piece. This is called A Seat at the Table. And if you can see her face, she has a very defiant look on her face because when she was younger, she was told that she couldn't get up from the table until she finished her meal. And there were particular things she didn't like. I think like green beans, maybe. So she said she sat until the sun set. So I painted this landscape behind her where it's like partially the sun is pulling away and half of it is there.
Are those trees?
Those are trees. They're done in my pointillist style that I do that take
Right.
eons
Oh,
to do.
Yeah, that's
Didn't you
That's
say your
one of the
mom loves
things.
those? That kind of tree.
In fact, she was the only
in
one
your
I
paintings.
let pick out the textile, and she said she liked my pointillist landscapes. And I was like, you would like that. You know, it's like, come on. Isn't this difficult enough? You know?
yeah, those are
portraits.
ridiculous.
Thanks, Mom.
But you know, she
What did
said
I do
me-
to you?
Yeah. She called me one day when I was working on them, and she asked me how I was doing. I said, well, you know, thanks to you, I got to do this. She goes, well, it took more patience raising you than
Oh, see.
But I always played that back in my head.
Snap.
I'm on the 53rd tree, Mom.
Yeah, right. You're a mother, you know.
Yes.
And father.
Yes, I do. I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I didn't.
I totally remember.
This
There's
is
Aaron.
Aaron Buckley, yeah. And
There
his
he
is called Anchor. In fact, that's a symbol that is indicative to the history of his family. And I remember there was an interview of him I think it was on Exposition, actually. I listened to an interview with him, and he was talking about that element. And that is where I listened to. And so if you can see, there's like a little bit of an anchor down in the ornamenture of the chair right there.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I paid tribute to that, and I think right around that time he lost his grandfather and stuff too. So there was like a really close connection to all that.
He looks very planted. Like, I'm not going anywhere.
He was very
Yes.
comfortable in that chair. It's a beautiful chair too. You should see the back of it. You know, you can't see it through the picture and all that. It was a shield back, I think is what it was called. And
Would those be writing quills in the back or what? Or just
banana
feathers?
leaves. Are you talking about
Banana
the textile?
Yeah.
The reason I chose banana leaves is because he was like I said, he had this very kind of forward nature about him, and I had him I wanted to imply, you know, like when you're in the jungle and a gorilla is coming through the trees, you're like, "Rah, you're on my territory," right? And that's nothing about who he was, but that's the story of what I was trying to tell there.
Wow.
In defense of Aaron, yeah.
That's all of them? Okay. All right.
Amazing
So
they
we've
are.
got 8 minutes.
And they are huge. They're huge.
Yeah, these
and
are not like 3 foot.
These
No,
are
they're
not.
6 foot by 7 foot in the frames. The frames was all done by Jimmy as well. They come from
He made the frames?
No, he did all. He found them and
Found
put them
them,
together
okay.
and found the manufacturers. And
Because they were pretty ornate gold and
They are.
stuff.
They're
Yeah.
everything is like full tradition. We took no shortcuts whatsoever.
They're just
I have full
amazing.
underpaintings under every one of the paintings. Everything is done in order for a painting to
Layering.
be legit and be an investment. You know, when you come from painting and people are buying your paintings, the next step to go for an artist as a professional is to make their paintings an investment. And there are certain rules that you have to follow,
What, like what?
like the time in which it takes to paint. The canvas itself, how it's mounted in the frame, all that's very important. It has to be done. You know, there's a proper way to do everything. So I had to do a lot of research and make sure I got everything right.
Oh, okay.
Because, you know, some of these paintings are the price of a car. And so it is an investment.
How long would
Imagine.
were there ones that didn't take as long? Yeah, I know the one with your mom would be long, but what is the average time, or what was a quicker one?
I don't really know what
Would you work on like 2 months?
the
Or?
quickest ones. No, they were all over 2 months,
Okay.
definitely. Oh, yeah. I don't really know. Because they're all oil paintings, you have to, when you put one layer there, they have to shift around. You have to shift them around. So while this one was, I kept a journal.
Oh, so you don't finish one and go to the next one.
No, definitely
Okay.
not. Now, I did Miranda's because that was the first one in the series. And I wanted to see if that was the direction I truly wanted to go into. And ironically, it happened to be a success, and that's what I wanted to do. So
much
hers was
of
the
it.
only one that I did do fully and by itself because
Okay.
it was the first in the series. Yeah, and then of course during the whole process, we developed a documentary around it as well, an hour-long documentary, which was picked by
We've
PBS.
seen that.
and
It's
played on there.
PBS, people. Yes.
I know. I grew up watching PBS, and you know what a dream that is, right?
It's just amazing.
It's incredible.
Well, you deserve it.
Oh,
you
thank
really
you.
do.
Thank you.
You do.
Hard work, yeah, it pays off.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It was
Follow
a, it
your
was a
dream,
lot of hard
eh?
work.
Follow
So
your
did any-
dream, eh? Right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Anything's possible, right, Jamie?
Mm-hmm.
Anything's possible.
Anything is, it starts in the head. You imagine what you want, and you just put the steps together to get there.
That's right. And
It's
do
that
it.
simple, and I know it seems very cliche, but that's really the way it happens.
And then you just do it.
Mm-hmm.
You just one step at a time keep doing it.
And that's what the name of my portrait is. It's called Just Do It. You know, I'm wearing Nikes, and it is about like every day I would get up, and you know, all of us, we can find excuses to not do
Oh, yeah.
things. I just like, just do it. Just quit complaining.
Yes.
Just do it. You know?
Yeah,
Step
just
up.
do it.
Yeah.
And guess what? It feels great.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like such a labor. It's like if it's a labor at all, it's a passion. You know, it's a work of passion.
Mm-hmm. It's not work, you know, because it is
Exactly.
something that I like to do. It is my passion.
And
Yes.
if it's like me, the first step is the hardest. But once you make that first step and you get like half an hour into it, then you've lost yourself and you're just going at it.
Yes. Yeah.
Who was it?
Just kind of get into the flow
And then Picasso had said that inspiration exists, but it has to find you working, which is so true,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
I mean, what can you get inspired about if you're not working on it and it's not in front of you?
Right.
You have to be down in it. Yeah.
So how do you approach these? Do you start with? I know you probably start with a drawing, but would you do the background first and layer outwards, or
The background comes last.
last? Okay, but you take care of the person first.
I usually
and
do
go
the
outwards?
face first.
Yeah.
The face, the hands, because they're by tradition they're always a focal point. That's immediately
Well,
what
that's
people go
how you
towards.
know who it is.
Yeah.
Is through the face, and the hands tell a lot about a person also. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not necessarily the arms or legs, but
Yeah, and this is visitor number 7 too, because there's symbols all through them, and some of them are so very obvious you don't really catch them. And you can see the 7 in my scarf. on my
oh,
neck.
okay.
Yeah.
And the reason I chose the red one is because it's a symbol of passion, and that was given to me by my mother. So you see my mom and my dad in this, and I have this whole thing with French culture anyway. Yeah, there's my mother as well. She has a stormtrooper ring on because she used to send me to my room, and I used to yell at the top of the steps to call her a stormtrooper, you know, for imprisoning me in my bedroom while all my friends were playing in the neighborhood. There's just loads of stories in them. I write on the canvases and I'll paint over top of it, so there's stories behind it. If I'm ever, given the privilege to be X-rayed as an artist, because sometimes I'll X-ray, you can see that there is stories behind the things.
Just like the, what's his name, Michelangelo, and you could see the previous painting behind it, and then he overlaid on top of that.
Exactly, and I've seen
like the Mona Lisa and stuff.
And I've seen those documentaries where they do that, and that kind of inspired me. I thought, well, what would they see if they look behind mine? It's just,
Just like whenever you build a house, well, should we hide some in the walls?
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
It's
I think
the
it's great.
coolest ever.
Yeah.
So how can everybody see your PBS documentary?
They can go on my website,
Which has been under his name whenever it pops up.
It's on there, yeah. And they can see my documentary. I have probably 3 or 4 different series I'm working on momentarily. One of them requires a warehouse space, so that's exciting. I'll leave you with that. Optical lenses,
Painting?
actually. No, it's actually assemblage and optical lenses. There is some painting involved. Huge. I have I think I have like 23 pallets full of optical lenses, and so it's a big project.
Okay.
Wow.
So you're not using them as lenses?
No,
Okay.
not necessarily.
Because I've seen people,
But I am tying it into the definition and tradition of what lenses are used for, yeah.
okay, because I've seen people make buildings into cameras,
Yeah.
by using big sheets and projecting, whatever's in front of the building through it. And
I can say it's something you've never seen before, so
Okay.
otherwise I wouldn't be approaching it.
right.
That
So that's
is
one
so
project you got going. What else you got going?
And then of course I'm painting as well, so I have other painting projects I'm working on.
Anything with a theme?
That I can
Or
draw.
people or
There's one called Vertical. The whole series is based on the ideal of the vertical, which means upward, upward, and it's about elevating the self, and so it's very minimalist and modern.
Can't wait to see these.
They're exciting, yeah.
All the dogs heard that. But
yeah.
If you visit my studio, if you visit my studio at the Historical Low Hotel in Point Pleasant, I'm on the top floor, the penthouse studio. You can get a glimpse of some of the stuff I'm working on because it's impossible to hide it.
oh my goodness.
It's just everywhere.
I highly recommend that.
Valerie has
Absolutely.
been there. Yeah.
So do you have anything out being displayed right now?
No.
Exhibitions?
I don't. As far as I know, I don't think I do.
Okay, everything's down and
Yeah.
okay, so they can't go and see anything. So go to the website. Do you do commission work?
I do not do commission work.
Okay.
I have I think it's 2.5 to 3 year waiting list of what I'm doing. So when people ask for commissions, I normally will say, well, if you can wait that long, and some people are like, okay, I will.
Yes, they will.
And these aren't portraits that I'm doing with the Visiteur series. I'm going to continue those the rest of my life. I don't know how many I'm going to eventually end up with, but the ideal is to make that a significant piece of art history. And I usually choose people. I've had people volunteer for them as characters. One was the mayor of Rio Grande, actually did.
Right.
And so we have him coming up as one of them.
Okay. Well, we're out of time. Time's up.
No.
Yep.
Oh, no.
Great time here.
Thank you.
Yes, it was.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank all of you for watching, and catch us next time on Exposition.